Hello, I'm up and going. I came on a few minutes early so that I could make sure that things hadn't changed too much since the last time I did a live because it has been quite a while. So I wanted to make sure that if I had to adjust something, I could adjust it. So, anyhow, here I am, and I'm just going to wait a little bit, wait a few minutes until everybody can show up and hoping that we're going to have a full house here. I What the topic is today is male circumcision, and I saw the phenomenal podcast by Wellness and Wisdom, which is on YouTube. So please take a look at theirs, and it was just wonderful. It was with Eric Klopper, and he also had done his own video. If you want to go through and look at Eric Klopper, Sex and Circumcision is his, and that was the original. That was about 5 years ago. So that was possibly what kind of spearheaded this, but that was absolutely the most intense, wonderful video that I've seen on it. And then there's another one, which is the Circumcision movie, I believe it is. And you can Google on that. I got to see it on, is it Tubi, Tubi? That's where I found it. There was about a 30-minute little snippet of it. And then after that, there was something that was an hour or so, which I didn't get a chance to watch. But I found all of that very interesting in itself. Although I didn't find it nearly as complete as Eric's was. So Eric's really went back to the very beginning, back to, he just, as a researcher, he went back, and then he brought all of that research forward to today. And actually learned a few things myself, which is really cool. And but just enjoyed it and could really relate to it as being a dominatrix for, so I've been a dominatrix since I'll know about 20, since 2003, 2005, somewhere around in there is when I really first started. But honestly, I got my real education by being a cam model, a dominatrix on a cam site. And the reason why I say that is because if you're going to be a dominatrix for in-person sessions, although I've got to say they are absolutely wonderful and can be very intense and can be just the best, that my education came off of the cam site because there are people, both male and female. I've got to say mostly male, 98% male, but they're from all over the world and able to do much of the shows. Some of it, of course, could not do it because there were rules and regulations through the cam of not being able to touch some subjects, but most of everything was pretty open. I just, as I said, by getting people all over the world and seeing a lot of different kinds of things, and the guys being, or many of them anyhow, being very open to sharing their experiences and the reason why they had certain things that they liked really, really helped and opened up a doorway to my understanding of the male psyche and things that happen during the progression of, pre-puberty to into manhood at whatever age. And honestly, I mean, I had people from the age of 18 to the people of 80 plus. Mhm, 80 plus. So, um, as I said, found it extremely interesting, and the majority of the guys, I've got to say, Of course, you always have some bad apples in the bunch of everything, but the majority of guys were grateful and appreciative for all of it. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand. I think they have a preconceived notion of what CAM is. And yes, it can be that. And it also can be much, much more. And let me explain a little bit. If you could just take a moment and open your mind just a little bit at that part, is that you when you have when you have a situation that somebody can be quite open with you, but it's not in person. But if you have someone that you feel very comfortable with, someone that you can definitely enjoy, to be able to talk about, to be able to explain things, then people really enjoy it. The majority of males, I think, that are on there, a good high percent of them. Hello, whoever walked in, I'm not able to see who it is, but anyhow, I know somebody walked in. But I would say the majority of people majority of guys work all day long. They come home, empty house, nothing. You know, they kick their shoes off, they put something comfortable on, they, grab some food or pop a top or whatever they do. And it's either going to be watch television or possibly jump on the campsite. And the reason why a lot of guys jump on the campsite is because it's interaction. The campsite in itself, some of the girls can be very drama. It can be all kinds of things on there, but they can type back and forth. They can talk to them. They can do shows if they want to, but you can go from room to room to be able to see what all the girls are doing and what's going on and what's happening and all of that. And it really becomes a connection to a social what am I trying to say? A social scene that most people don't have, because I don't think here really in the US too much, people don't go like maybe to the pub or to somewhere to where they would have around a group of people. Most of us go home. We go home, we do our job, we go home, hit that button, the garage door goes up, garage door goes down, and we walk in the house, and we don't walk out to the next day. And so I think there are a great deal of very lonely people and people that really are looking for some kind of connection. And as I said, I'm sure the, bouncing body parts probably don't hurt much of it. All right, all right, it's fun. They're guys, that's just kind of part of it. But they can really enjoy, I think, a part of themselves that they're not able to enjoy with other people. I mean, you're going to tell your family, about that, this is what you enjoy or what of those kind of things. It just doesn't work. And that's one of the takeaways that I got with that one podcast, was the fact that most guys have never talked about their circumcision at all. They do. And some guys don't even know that they had circumcision. A lot of guys don't even know that it's different until they're, around a situation to look at it and know that it's different, and possibly be old enough to be able to Google and check things out. But that in itself is what I found, is that so many guys, because one thing, I like to talk, just like I'm talking now. I enjoy talking. I enjoy sharing things. I enjoy guys asking me questions. And I've had guys ask me questions about their partner, what they could do with it, or things that they can do for themselves, and just education-wise in whatever it is. Because guys really don't know. But if they have somebody that they feel comfortable to ask, then they absolutely love it. So that's basically what I've done, probably quite heavily, for at least the last 5 years for CAM, was to really make that connection to people, really care about people. what I noticed in some of the shows, that some people would turn on their camera and others wouldn't, and that's of course a respect on that. You just don't know. Some people don't want their face or body parts or anything shown. That's all good. But what I've also noticed is that there are guys that have had deformities, that have had different things that have happened to them, and they don't feel comfortable with showing it to people. I used to, one of my background is, welcome whoever came in. One of my backgrounds is medical. I worked in the hospital for a very long time. I was part of the trauma team. I worked in the ICUs, in that kind of stuff. So I'm used to bodies. Bodies don't bother me, seeing bodies. So that in itself, to have someone brave enough that if they've had some kind of trauma happen to their genital, that they're able to actually put it on camera for me and to do a show, to try and connect deeply, and to know that every time they come back to me, they know that they're going to enjoy the show because there's no judgment, because there's no pressure one way or another. There's no, ooh, there's no any of it. And trust me, I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen smallest to smallest. I've seen actually negative, and if it can happen, honestly, if medical condition, to the most very, very large. So I think everybody thinks that, they would have to look like a porn star or something like that. And that's far from the majority of people that are on cam. And I have people from very young, as I said, to 80 plus years old. And sometimes the 80 plus year old guys want to chat. Some want to be romantic. Some want to, you can go into all kinds of things, but it's really a connection that someone is looking for. So, in being on there, and being able to have people all around the world do all different kinds of shows. One thing that I did notice, and of course that's pretty common if anybody knows anything about the dominatrix stuff, the BDSM. You can like fill in the blank for all of that kind of stuff. But there's a couple of things. Yes, the strap-on kind of stuff, but also things that the guys want done to their genitals. And as I said, some guys would just shudder and going like, "No, I don't want that," because I've had guys, on there going, "Oh my God, no." But that's the thought, I'm like, where did this come from? Since I had the background on many other ones, because as I said, the guys were nice enough to give me a background of why something happened. And many times things happen when you look at a younger male, pre-puberty to adulthood, that once the hormones start rolling, is that yes, you have the urge to touch oneself, but it also seems to kind of stimulate of what you're looking around at, you know do you all of a sudden, see boobs? Do you all of a sudden see big butts? Do you also see, you could fill in the blank with any of that. And then all of a sudden you're looking around, you're like, ooh, she has some, oh, look, they're this and they're that, right? So that's how the younger male starts their adventure through it, and it just builds as it goes. And that's the interesting part of it, is because many of the shows, aka fantasies in itself, are related to a lot of that. And of course, anybody, male or female, all of our fantasies progress as we go along. And each stage in our life, we become attracted to one thing that we may not even think about something that we were attracted to a year ago or something, but you can go on and they all get layered. And for me, I kind of envision is that all of our fantasies are like television programs on the TV, right? We've got a remote and we're going through each one. Yeah, nah, 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 nah. Oh, yeah, that looks interesting. And then you could try it, and then you're like, man, it's not working, and then you keep going till you find the one that you're looking for. And even though something may have worked at one time, it may not work at this time, or there are certain things that work during certain times. And so it's pretty interesting because I would see guys, be all over the map sometimes. So I knew that it was easier just to ask and just say, "What's going on? Where are we at tonight?" Or today, and then we would go from there. But what I found the interesting part, as I said, is that so many guys, if they really kind of think about it, they don't know where a lot of things of why they have the feelings about their genitals that they have. And I would say probably unless you have like older brothers or something like that, that would kind of color your feelings about those kind of things. But just interesting in itself is that, as I said, there's so much that I've seen on how, uh, well, let's go back just a little bit. In cam, what I've noticed is generally there's two main type of guys on there. We're going to go with guys. I did have some females, but we're going to go with guys because they were 98% guys. Okay. So there's really kind of two spectrums. All right. One spectrum was a guy that was very, I want to say, forceful or aggressive towards the female. All right. Wanted to do all kinds of things to her, was very aggressive. I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. All right. And then the other side of it were people that were the guys that wanted things done to themselves. So the interesting part that I noticed is that the one that was very aggressive really projected that that behavior outward, the aggressiveness. You know, I'm not going to go into it here because YouTube is very, censor happy, but very aggressive. So you can think, you can just imagine what the aggressiveness part of it is. And so it's very projected. It was projected. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, but. And then I had my other guys, most of my kink and my fetish guys, and everything happened to them. It was never projected out. So I'm like, this is a completely different person. Psychologically, it's a completely different person. They would never be rude. They were never wanting to harm me. They never wanted to injure me. In fact, they were coming to me. Let's just put it that way. They were coming to me, let's put it this way, with their little fetish in their hand and say, can you please help me with this? Because they're unable to share it with a partner or whoever that they're with. So they want to share it with someone that understands it, will accept it, no judgment. And so that's where I really learned the difference of what was going on. So, and yes, the things that happened to them, they were asked to be humiliated, to be harmed, to be used, to be, forced. Okay. So it was exact opposite. So of course, when I see this wonderful podcast and I'm starting to put two and two together of how it started. Okay. How circumcision is done. the strapping down, the the stimulation, the cutting. It really put like 2 and 2 together for me with some people. Now, is it 99%? No, because I'm sure there's probably some people, there's probably some guys that are intact and they probably didn't have that happen. And it could possibly have been somewhere else, something else. But I'm still going, is this a possibility of where these feelings came from that they have no idea, but it's surfaced and it seems to, um, it just seems to build on a lot of it. And unfortunately, many keep getting more and more intense with it. It can be really pretty crazy for some, but most of it is what they do to themselves. And then on top of it, think about that it is actually a control issue of what's going down. They have no control mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever. They have no control. They were strapped down. They were they were violated, and the trust factor was broken. Everything at that point, at that baby child's life, things changed. And yes, things may have not surfaced in any way. But another thing that really kind of went ding ding to me also is that when Eric said, and I believe Josh did too, is the fact that we wonder why sometimes when we get to be a certain age, we're wondering why we have a certain feeling and we don't know what the feeling is, but the feeling's there. And it's, you can talk about satisfaction. You can talk about, and he talks about, success is that the female is a sex object and the male is a success object in itself, and how it's used and how it's pushed and how it's, really streamlined into another control factor. We all are, but that's beside the point. But all of that kind of put things together 2 and 2 for me, that said that this is, I think, a larger picture than what anybody really ever thought about before. Because once again, you hear over and over where the male will say, I never thought about my genitals. I never thought that I was, I didn't think I was different, or it wasn't any big deal, or there wasn't anything. And then you can't get a parent to talk about it, or if it is, it's a very defensive posture, or generation before and before and before, all control things. And so when we go through and we look at this, and thank heaven for the blessings of the younger generations, not only being able to do thorough research everywhere and get really good information, but also to have that feeling of like, this is not right. This is effed up. And something needs to be done about it. And Eric Klopper had that epiphany. He had that light bulb turn on that said, there's no going back. I cannot stop. I need to help other infants. And so that in itself was just, as I said, each of it was really kind of amazing. I found, and I had to chuckle a little bit because farther down the podcast, because if you ever watched his original podcast, the sex and circumcision, you will see the power of a 19-year-old, I think it was 19 or 20-year-old, in the anger and the rage and everything that went with that. Well, that was, the hormones at that time too. I mean, let's just face it, when you're that age, you got hormones that are ready to explode in every direction. And he's now, 31, and he's a little calmer, mature, but he's worked through that anger, he's worked through that rage, and he's now ready to really become an activist and do what needs to be done. And I would say that probably with every 5 years, with every 10 years, he's going to get even better as he goes. And hopefully he won't have to do it in 10 years. I mean, that's what he's hoping on. And I think that's what we're all hoping on for that part, that fact. But I find, as I said, I found it. I hope you got a chance to watch it, to watch all of them. As I said, there's 3 of them. There's Sex and Circumcision from Eric Klopper. There's Wellness plus Wisdom that had the circumcision with that interviewed Eric Klopper and recently, and also it just, it is just so good. So I'm just one, as I said, what kind of goes into my mind, because I absolutely love the psychology aspect of dominatrix. I love the fact that that is something that I enjoy. Not only I got it from the medical field, that where you have to really sit and observe someone to be able to make sure that they're a-okay. And then you just, through that observation, you're able to do an evaluation of it. And that really helped me a lot as being a dominatrix, because there is a point of it. A dominatrix is someone that, yes, is in control, but the most important, is that somebody has an understanding, is mature enough, and guides the person through the session. That's exactly what the dominatrix does. It's not what the porn stuff and any other, things that have said that, it's just the hot outfits and the attitude, which, I suppose it can be, but that isn't that isn't really where it was meant to go. It is really meant to go inside. And if I could just take a moment to kind of explain a little bit about that. People who enjoy the dominatrix services, believe it or not, are post-military. And you're like, huh? It's like, yeah, post-military. And the reason why is because many times when they were young, they were indoctrinated into whatever branch of military they were in. Number one, the hormones were high, okay, because the military wants them at that point, right? Because their bodies are fucking rock hard. Any guy can tell you that when they're 18, 19 years old, their bodies are rock hard, right? You can, all of a sudden the spanks on the butt don't do anything, everything, the broom, you smack them with a broom, it just bounces right off and the kid laughs at you, right? So anyhow, so the military is like, yeah, but really what they want is that you get a male at that age, right? Because they're impressionable. First of all, that if it has an attitude, military doesn't mind. They don't care, because they have somebody there 24/7, 365 days a year to pound your fucking little bitch ass into the dirt if needs to be, to get that attitude straightened around. They have no problems with doing that. But what they do is they take a younger male, right, and put them with other younger males, with a leader, and they create a pack, right? Rules, regulations, and then they start training them when to wake up, when to go to sleep, what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear. We're going to take all of that. We're going to take all of that away from you. You don't even have to think about it. We're going to take care of that. You're only going to have to do one thing, and is what we tell you to do, whether it's to exercise or to go through your drills or whatever it is. That's what you need to focus on. But you don't have to worry about any of those kind of things. And interestingly enough, if I may say, is that many people that get out of the military get really overwhelmed. It's like, I have to make decisions on everything. And that was something that they had given up or released when they went into the military, because they didn't have to do that. But once you're an individual, going in as an individual, once you go into the military, now you become a group. You're not an individual anymore. You have a hive mindset. You all work together as a unit, as one, no one left behind mindset, one mindset, the military mindset. Nobody else's mindset, not your mindset, not anybody else's, as one. And there are a few people that they will pull out and use as leaders because they have different qualifications. But the majority of kid that goes in there, 18 is the best. Right out of high school, you have no clue, no nothing, but we're going to set you up. We're going to show you how to do all that you need to do, and you're going to go through and you're going to do it. You're going to, and of course they've got, well, you can go to school and, you can travel the world and, like the Middle East and, some other places like that. All right. But when you're 18, you have absolutely no clue about life. And in addition, man, I should have looked it up, but I didn't. But in addition, the front part of the brain, there is a part of the brain in teenagers that are not developed, that's not developed yet fully. And that's the reason why they're a rebel without a clue. That's the reason why they're going off doing every which way. It's because their perception is not clear. And we get really upset at teenagers, because I know I had two of them. We get really upset with teenagers because we're like, well, don't you see it? It's like, don't you see it? And the kid's like, no, I see it in my own, perception. I see it in my own time and how I see it. And I see it with other kids my own age, the way they see it, because you all see it all, because they all see it all jumbled up in the way they want to see it. And when they find a leader, then they all follow that leader, right? And all think the same way. Once again, pack set. They go together with that. So, as I said, the reason why why military. So now you've got a military guy. All right, you've got him going through as a unit, and no matter what, you have to go through. You have to, have your buddies back. You learn everything about everybody. Everybody learns about you. Nothing, is kept from anyone. But the more that they are taught, and it's definitely the more advanced, if you got like the Navy SEALs or the Marines or whatever, the higher that they go up, they're taught in certain ways. And special forces, that's the word I was trying to think of. But the more special forces that they get into, is that they are trained how to bypass their physical body, because they have to be completely and totally functioning, right? So if they get shot, they get injured, if anything happens, they have to be able to bypass it and still be able to do whatever their mission is to do. So what I would call it in my business is called subspace or submissive space. Is that somebody they can be triggered in one way or another, but they actually go into what is called subspace, and it is from many guys explain it as kind of a floaty space, but they can go in there, and that's the reason why you have to be very careful, because if somebody has them tied down, if somebody's doing anything, whips or whatever it is, that person will be able to physically bypass it. They can just put in the pleasure, if they choose to, and focus on their goal of what they wanted out of the session. And you can overdo it. They're not in the state of being able to say the safe word, really, or sometimes to be able to say enough, it hurts. They're not able to do that. For people who get into it very deep, it's a very hypnotic type of state. And so you have to understand that I think a lot of military special forces learned how to do it. They had to sit cramped and in positions for a long time. They couldn't eat. They couldn't go to the bathroom. They couldn't do a lot. They had their mission. That's all they could do. And then many people maybe did things that didn't agree with them. Somebody was a sniper. Somebody, you had to do things, you had to go through and do missions that weren't good, that a lot of things happened. And so that starts shutting down parts of somebody's psychological dealing with things. And so it's really much easier to go into that and let all that stuff be in that space. Let that pain, let that overwhelm, let that, fill in the blank on there. Let that be in that space, because that would be the functioning space of war, of wherever and whatever they were doing. And the reason why I say is that many, when they come back home, they have all of this built up inside them. And so they're non-functional. They don't understand. They're out of all of that. Now they have to make all the decisions. Now they don't have their group of buddies anymore. Now they don't have a single mission that they understand that they have to go on. They don't have the support. They don't, as I said, of the group, they don't have that support, and very difficult to go possibly back to a marriage and try and be very functional in that, because they don't have the skills for it. They grew up so many years in the military where the military had programmed them. Unfortunately, there is no deprogramming of that. There never has been any deprogramming of any of it. And it's a reason why they struggle so much. But if you're lucky enough to be able to have one come to you and maybe kind of understand that they need to be in that space, that you're able to, and sometimes they're really afraid. It's like, you need to tie me down. You need to tie me down, because instincts will kick in. I'll become violent. I'll fight back. So it's like, okay, definitely tie down, because be somewhere that somebody can't hear them screaming and hollering and yelling and many other things, because they will, many times that all gets triggered. And in a session, that's what you would start working on, little bit by little bit, to start chipping that away. But that person also has to feel very trusting and comfortable with you, to know that you're there you're there for the betterment of it, is that you're there to help them. And so you start working at it. And there are some guys that, oh man, I mean, you could do so much damage to them, and their body, it kind of bounces off. Everything is armored. It's called armoring. And people who have been exposed to so much stuff, they can armor. So it's really chinking through that mentally, emotionally. Sometimes, you have to talk. Sometimes it's no talk. It's just let them go into their mindset, and to be able to process how they have to process it. You work it for as long as you can work it. And then it comes to a point, you just kind of see the exhaustion in them. And you can try pushing it a little longer, to see where they go. And then sometimes you can just tell it's the end of the session, and you're like, good. And then you bring them out gently out of it. And they are so vulnerable, you cannot believe. I mean, there can be tears, there can be stuff. It can be 2-3 days at least of being raw, feeling very raw, and processing things of like, oh, I need to get this out. I need to do things. So basically, after the session, it's blankets. It's very quiet talking. It's water. It's like, and it's also days after. It's checking up. How are you doing? What's going on? You need to stay in there. Do we need to come back? Do you need to come and just chat with me for a little bit, to connect to it, because they're not able to talk to anyone else. So that's a little bit of what goes on. Of course, not every single one, some just want their, some just, spanking or whatever, But when I see deeper things of the deeper traumas, and so when you work with deeper traumas and you understand where the space is and where the space is that some of the guys go and how they work with it in the armoring, and when you hear and see through that podcast and through his original, Eric Klopper's original podcast, the rage, the anger, that how does it come out? Does it go out physically, or does it go internally and harm that person and want to do self-harm in a way? And it does have and of course it's going to he's going to relate it and associate it to the genitals. And not understand the reason why. But he just goes through and he does it because he understands that, number one, it brings him relief. That's in number two. With many, it can be the hardest orgasmic sexual experience that they have, which once again brings guilt, shame, fill in the blank on that one too. So it's a never-ending circle and cycle for them that they don't understand. And to be honest, if you ever brought it up to them right now, maybe they wouldn't even want to. Maybe they're like, no, this is the way that it is. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to change it. And that's all well and good too. But for those like Eric and Josh and whoever was, has watched that says, I need to process this. I need to, yes, you may be having children someday. You may be having male children someday. You may be having to make a decision and looking at yourself, deeper at yourself, and going like, what am I doing to really make this worse in my life? Has this, as it being such a strong control factor over someone's life. So as I said, that's where I find it interesting. And I have to, clarify the fact that I do have two children. Both were females. So I did not have that decision to make. And they were both, when they were born 1980 and 1981, 1982, respectively. And, but I can say is that the kid's dad was uncircumcised, and they lived in a small town, and the doctor that had delivered his two older brothers was a different doctor. They got circumcised. The doctor, when he was born, the mom's like, well, and he's like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this child. You don't need to do that. Boom. So he never got circumcised. So it was never really an issue. But for me, being in the hospital and whatever, I had no opinion either way. It just wasn't a big deal to me. And it saddens me when I hear when I hear those kind of things of somebody saying that that it's dirty and it's icky and it's whatever it is, and it makes me crazy. Makes me absolutely crazy. And I'll tell you the reason why. Is because, to be perfectly blunt and honest, women's genitals change also. We're not all this bright ray of sunshine all the time either, okay? As we go through our stages of life, they change. Hormonally, childbearing, aging, all of that changes. And if some guy, I was going to have sex, some guy looked and, ew, I'd be fucking livid. I would. Women have enough with their boobs. They all of a sudden they're always worried about their boobs, especially after childbirth. They can flatten, blah blah blah, whatever. But can you imagine for down there if some guy said that to you? You know, it would be it would be devastating itself. But women don't think twice about that about a guy. So as I said, I've heard stories. I've been on cam. I've heard stories. You know, and sometimes that's what the guy wants me to say to him, that he's insufficient, you know, and that's fine. But that's where he wants to be in his mindset. And I have no problems with doing that show because that's what he's asked me to do. But that's not something that I would purposely do on someone. So, anyhow, there were some things that I kind of wanted to go over a little bit, just the high points that definitely the history and the religion rites, RITES, not RIGHTS, but RITE, yes. And those need to be highlighted. And really, there's no information for the medical specialists. And, they're completely and totally ignorant. To me, through my course of time, because I've been in natural medicine too since then, because mainstream medicine made me crazy. But it's just like I equate it to like nutrition. Most doctors don't know about nutrition, have no idea, but it fuels the body. That's like having a car and not having a clue about the gas and the oil and the transmission fluids and all those kind of things. Yeah, no, we're just going to keep putting, things in you to keep shoving you through life. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense. And for something that I think that if somebody was such a, $1 billion plus a year, then they really should be paying attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it. And the urologists and midwives and OBGYNs and whoever's messing with that, they should be trained in it, don't you think? They should have lots of information, don't you think? Yep, that's where I'm at. So anyhow, that is and it's very, very disappointing. And the fact that there's no accountability for the surgery if it's botched, because it was a voluntary surgery. That doesn't piss off the Pope. And I think a couple of things that is kind of interesting is that he pushed towards the end of it. Maybe I should go with some other things first. Yes, very much so. Is that through the DNA lineage, and this is scientific, the scientists already know, through DNA, lineage, etc., right? They know that our bodies hold memories. So you just keep kind of going back and back and back. You have memories of your father, grandfather, if you're a male, and you actually have memories of the mother too, because it goes together. Anytime, this is something that I'm going to write about, but this is something that's kind of interesting because before, child's going to be born, you've got the egg, has been in the mom since in her whole life, right? It was in her when she was in utero, and her mom, and when her mom was in utero with the grandmother. So it's like, it's like all of these different, when you sit back and you look at it, it's all of these things that are just stacking up. But whatever that woman has experienced is definitely in the cells of her body. whether it's in utero or afterwards. It's in the cells, which it's in that egg too, her whole life. The male has it DNA-wise, lineage-wise, and his sperm, because his hormonal system is a little different. His hormonal system is actually every 24 hours, where a woman runs like 28 days cycle, run a 28-day cycle. So depending upon whatever the guy's done, how's he drank? Has he drank? Has he, smoked? Has he, what's he eaten? What's his mental? Where's he been mentally? Where has he been? Everything. All of that's going to be charged up into that sperm. You meet the two together, and then it's a mess sometimes. So so when you kind of look at things, and when you say, it's very much so, it's like this big ball of yarn, and you start really kind of pulling things out and pulling, just trying to sort everything out, like Eric did. You start seeing different things, but you start saying there's cell memories. Everything is there. It's in DNA, it's in cells, it's our lineage, it's in the ceremonies that they continually do, that the words through the words they chant, through everything that they do. They keep compounding it over and over and over, which makes it, difficult to break. And the only way you can break it is the way Eric did, that said, this is it. I'm done. Boom. Not going to happen anymore. Nope. The buck stops here. And that's how it needs to go for all of us and in all of our stuff. And it can be done. Interestingly enough, the people with, as he said, the people who have the highest violence towards females are those who have been circumcised. Middle East, parts of Africa, the US. So when we start, that's not a fun thing to have to look into. To look back at and look into, okay? So look at Iran, how they treat their women, how so much just really changed. If you look back in the 70s, they were wearing little short mini skirts and go-go boots. The women of Iran. Oh yeah. You can Google the pictures of it. Beautiful women. And now all of a sudden, they can be stoned and beaten in the street, and all kinds of things, of morality police and different things that are going on with that. Just horrendous things, once again, for people in general. But we're going like, okay, why is somebody so angry, so hateful against things? And then you have the happiest countries in the world, all intact. You got Sweden, you got Denmark, you got Switzerland, you got I think Finland. I think you got happy people that are neutral. They don't want to do war. They don't want to do any of that. They're happy people. They're like, yeah, So I think we need to take a good harsh look on everything. And I believe that we need to also be hyper aware of who is manipulating this whole scenario and this whole story. As Eric said, is that it strongly, and in his original one, he had listed all of the businesses, American Pediatric Society, WebMD, and a whole bunch of places that were holding on to it, that had money, that had things, that were run by very high Jewish people in it. And he said, I don't have the, I certainly don't have the information, but he was talking about also, I think it was Sweden, I think he said, that they were thinking of stopping it. And somebody from somewhere was Jewish, said, if you do, we will stop funding you, funding something or other, which was very important to them. Seriously? Is your kid's dick really? It's because they know, as he said, it's because they know that they can manipulate and how they manipulate it. So that's the pressure in it. And then we have, I think most recently is Bill Gates going over to Africa and forcing the circumcisions on parts of Africa. And it's like, why? I have no idea of why you would go into a country and say, this is what you have to do. In a country that, number one, has very high HIV rate, but also a very high rape rate. That there were some women, there was a woman that actually invented a device that a woman could put inside her that was literally like steel or something like that. It had teeth coming all down, and the male wouldn't know it until he got his member into her, and then it would shred him. Hello? But, oh, well, they just can't change their culture, It's like, well, that will change culture real quick. Guys will think twice before that. But anyhow, all right. We'll wrap this up because it's almost an hour now. We'll just give it a few minutes. But yeah, I'm so happy that Eric Klopper has really brought this to light, and keeping my fingers crossed that he's going to be able to go like gangbusters and really get a lot done. In ending, I would say for anybody that if you do have an issue and you choose to do some work with it, would be therapists are wonderful, psychologists are wonderful, but I would say look at the credentials and look for a trauma-aware therapist. That's the person you need. Not all psychologists are equal in that in itself, and they will have specialties, but definitely look for a trauma-aware therapist and be able to work directly and most powerfully with what you want to work in. I mean, because you don't want to be with somebody for 10 years and still, be unwrapping, things that are fine to unwrap, but when you're really trying to unwrap this thing fairly soon and to get to the meat of the matter, I suppose. But anyhow, but that's it. So it's been just about an hour. So I appreciate you for being in here. Please give me the like, and please share this with anybody that you may, deem worthy of hearing more about this. But I appreciate it. So have a most wonderful evening.